GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that trades narratives like NBA teams trade draft picks. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton. It's Tuesday, June 17th. Today's episode was recorded on June 10th. We are joined today by Arjun, the co-CEO of Kraken, one of the OG crypto platforms. They've been around from 2011, and today they are one of the largest exchanges and crypto platforms in the world. So today we are going to get Arjun's take on the future of finance. We're going to talk about tokenized stocks. We're going to talk about the convergence of crypto and TradFi. We're going to talk about IPOs that are happening right now and Kraken's IPO. We're going to touch on that towards the end. Just a incredible episode into the mind of somebody who has spent their career in finance and now sees crypto and blockchain in a way that I haven't heard it before. You guys are really going to love this episode. Before we jump in, I got to tell you guys, the Milk Road team has been cooking and they just launched Road Degen. This is a new newsletter to help you navigate the trenches every day in a hilarious and very entertaining format. It'll give you alpha on new meme coins, on new things that you can, basically the daily gamble, the daily casino of crypto. Super fun and super exciting. The first drop just happened last week. Subscribe, hit the link in the show notes so you can subscribe today. Also, the Milk Road team is going to be at Permissionless at the end of June, and we're going to have our own event in New York on June 23rd at 7 p.m. Hit the link in the show notes to sign up for the event. It's free, and you can meet the Milk Road team. I won't be there, but the rest of the team will be there, and love to meet you. And if you want a ticket for Permissionless, you can get your ticket for $100 off in the show notes. So check it out. Without further ado, Arjun, welcome to the Milk Road Show.
Thanks for having me. Well, as you mentioned, I am the co-CEO of Kraken, and we are one of the largest, most trusted crypto platforms, pretty globally. In fact, mostly, Europe and US in terms of where we are. I'm also the chairman of Tribe Capital. We're like a venture-backed firm. We invest across venture and tech, and most of the career that I've had has been in essentially building, investing, and scaling businesses across all stages, public and private, early, mid, and late stage. And over the last 10 years, I've had much more of a focus on innovation and finance and technology and how those all kind of converge with each other. So excited to dive in and dig in with you.
No, yeah, me too. One question I always like to ask, and it's just more of a fun question, is when did you first make your first crypto investment and what did you buy?
So there's two stories to that. One is not as fun, but I'll walk through it.
Tell us the fun one.
No, I'll do both.
Okay.
So I used to be in a company called, I started a company called Laughing Out Loud Applications, and it used to be in the mobile gaming and social gaming space. And I spent a lot of time in the Asian markets, so predominantly Korea and Japan. And I was starting to get used to a very specific way in which they catered to virtual currencies. And the second company I was making was a company called MessageMe. So this is right at the time WhatsApp had just started, Telegram wasn't out yet, and we were thinking about putting in how to send and receive payments within the application of messaging. So maybe a little too ahead of its time, but a lot of what we were doing was research. By that time, the Bitcoin paper had come out, and one of my DevOps backend guys had said, "Let's just buy some Bitcoin." So he did with, and he was mining it, created his own rig, and it started his whole process, and pretty wild and out there. Unfortunately, I just thought it was kind of a bag of jokes, and he had gifted the computer with all the Bitcoins on it to me. I'm not sure how much it was, but I think it's like a pretty penny today. And I ended up just putting it on the side, leaving it, and then selling, I think, the whole desktop. When my company was sold, we got rid of some of the old equipment because it didn't go with us to Yahoo when I'd sold the company. And so I don't know who has that desktop or those Bitcoin.
Do they know that there's Bitcoin on it?
No, I don't think so. And I'm sure they reformatted it and everything else, but it's lost forever. So that's the first foray into losing a ton of money. And then the first time
that's how everyone starts in crypto, by the way.
It was brutal. And then the first time I bought Bitcoin again off of one of the platforms was in 2014, December 2014, if I remember exactly. That was the time frame.
Okay. So you still did well. You still got in quite early then. So well done. I'm sure that's worked out for you. Okay, let's talk about the as you said, you've been spent the last decade on the future of finance and the future of tech.
Mhm.
And crypto is at the center of all of this. And I want to focus first on a few specific things that Kraken is doing. And one of those is that obviously Kraken is a leading crypto exchange, but just a month or two ago in April, I believe, you launched stocks on Kraken, not tokenized
Mhm.
stocks, just stocks. So US clients can now invest in, I think there's 11,000 stocks that you offer commission free directly in the Kraken app. Well, that's a very interesting move to me because that tells me that you are thinking, okay, the future isn't just on chain. There still is a future for TradFi and for crypto users to be able to use Kraken to do their stock investments. What was the thinking behind this? And can you talk us through what the results have been so far? Are you seeing your users purchasing stocks through Kraken? Is that a potential big part of your business moving forward?
Yeah, so let me take a step back. I think when you in the 70s there was this Michael Milken had famously termed democratization of finance, and you kind of saw what that did for the global economy. I think what's more important is when we talk about the future of finance today, what does that actually mean? So the way I think about it is the future of finance is and will continue to be programmable. And I think will continue to be permissionless, and it'll increasingly be more decentralized. Now we keep hearing this theme, and I think a lot of people have this like push and pull in the ecosystem, right? Which is like, how do you centralize something, or how do you make something safe? But I think you're generally seeing more and more of a shift from institutions being like the gatekeepers and the protocols of the rails where they're not open, and it's a closed environment. I'll kind of walk you through that, and I think that's really important too, which is that's kind of how we see the future of what Kraken will be in the future is how do we continue to make this world, and how can we enable much more programmability, much more permissionless systems, and making systems much more decentralized, even within internally at Kraken. And I do think crypto is not an asset class, right? A lot of people kind of still define it as crypto is the asset class. It's not, right? When you start thinking about the infrastructure for what it's going to be for global markets, already what's happening in the stablecoin market. In addition to that, I think what's really exciting is that AI is automating what used to be required of like regular people, regular armies of individuals and ops teams. And so it's helping augment exactly what we're talking about, things being much more programmable, much more permissionless, and ideally much more decentralized. And then, as you had mentioned, tokenization is going to change how value is created, distributed, and owned. I think distributed and owned is really what it comes down to when we talk about being programmable, permissionless, and decentralized. And so, if that's going to be across everything from treasuries to tokenized equities, the winners are going to be the ones, in my opinion, that can bridge that legacy trust with new technology. And that's it's really what the core of what we're trying to do. So how do you break that down into themes, right? So
Mhm.
what's the infrastructure for crypto? It's not just trading, right? It's powering payments, it's identity, it's custody, it's credit, it's governance. Well, we're seeing some of this today. AI and finance as well, right? So you're able to now build systems that are much smarter, much faster, much leaner for everybody, not just institutions, but every individual. So we use this term, or I use it a lot, which is the future is already here in some cases, but it's not evenly distributed. It's from a few sci-fi books in the past that I used to read. And so you're starting to think about like risk to research to customer experience. Customer experience, I think, is really, really key. So those are two themes, right? So crypto, AI plus finance, then DeFi and tokenization, right? We've been talking about it for over 10 years, but it's only just starting to happen. And the reason why that's the case is that we're figuring out ways in which we can move those real world assets and functions on chain finally, right? Because you're starting to try to figure out how to bridge that gap. So I think private credit will move. You're already seeing treasuries move. Equity, you're starting to see us make some of those moves, and I'm sure others will follow. Open systems, which basically means you need interoperability and composability. I think a lot of people forget about that, which is you have all of these monolithic companies, including Kraken, where we're creating these experiences. And what we have to continue to fight against is making sure those experiences are not closed. We have to be interoperable. We have to be able to make sure that we are also building systems that are composable. And that, in my opinion, will always beat siloed platforms in the long term. And so how do you build, but at the same time, you still have to build trust models. And so the way in which we think about Kraken is that, look, there is more regulatory clarity. there's much more clarity around decentralization now finally, and you saw the announcement from the SEC yesterday,
Wasn't that
which
so exciting, that announcement?
it's
Oh my
it,
gosh, it was
it's in, it's
beautiful.
in, it's incredible. So what that allows you to do now is think about mainstream adoption, again, have market stability, market trust. And so you can now start building out what I'd call these hybrid trust models, where we can build what Kraken should have been and can be now moving forward, rather than a closed ecosystem. So that's kind of how I think about it. So it's crypto infrastructure, AI finance, DeFi and tokenization, open systems, and then hybrid trust models. And that's how we think about how we're orienting our company moving forward.
So what's the end state for Kraken? And you could paint this picture either by talking about Kraken, or maybe you could talk more broadly about how crypto exchanges, fintechs, and banks, how are they all going to, how are they all going to work together? Like, is Kraken going to become are we going to have one company that we go to that is both a crypto exchange, offers fintech like services, also offers banking like services? Like, is that the future here? Help me understand the end state.
So so this will be a little bit complicated, and I'm sure, some of actually, I don't think it's complicated. I think it's like the way in which the world works. And so in that, it rinses, repeat history is like, look, if the internet needed AWS to scale, I want to make sure for an open financial system, you'll need something like Kraken to be able to create that. And so everything that I just mentioned, right? So when you think about platforms, you don't think about just products, right? So you do need to think about extensibility, user development ecosystems. You do need to think about network effects. Okay, well, what are those types of products? We do think about multi-asset, multi-rails, and I think that's really important as well, right? So when you think about RWAs, FX trading, payments, remittances, what will NFTs now look like moving forward with real world assets? You don't need to own the full stack, but you need to own enough of the stack to be able to make sure you can ensure liquidity, ensure custody, and trust. And then you want to make sure that trust and compliance as a moat gives you that hybridization that I had mentioned earlier. And you use that not as a trade-off, but as an advantage. And I think a lot of people think of it as a trade-off rather than the advantage. And so I think the end state for Kraken is really to become more and more a financial OS, right? Like a global platform that can power as many things, from trading to custody to payments, again, to identity, real world assets, and issuance. And we don't have to own it. We just have to be able to enable it, the same way I think about AWS. And so, like, Facebook just isn't a social network, and I don't think you can think about Kraken as just an exchange. It's one thing that we do, but we've also internally built infrastructure layer for open and programmable financial systems. We want to focus on making sure that there's one user that can own their own globally accessible, digital tokens that's native to them. And I think, like, we want to be at the forefront of helping to power that, even though that we are just starting now, and this is evolving over a period of time.
Yeah, it feels to me, and it's very interesting to hear you talk about multi-asset in one platform. Like, that feels like a core of where this is going. Is that, yeah, right now, sure, the average person would say, "Oh, Kraken crypto exchange," because that's what you're best known for. But the future is already. I mean, we're already in the future. Kind of coming back to your sci-fi line, it's already here, and but that feels like it's going to continue. And I assume Kraken, and I look at others, your competitors, I look at, Coinbase or Robinhood. I don't know if you think about fintechs as competitors. Do you think about fintechs as competitors?
Look, I think when I think about the world of open source and closed source, is that a lot of fintech, and rightfully so, they're trying to make experiences great, right? When you think about DeFi, DeFi is all over the place, right? Like, it's a lot of protocols. It's really complicated. In order for you to think about building a regular, decent, so let's call it an open banking system, if you want to think about bigger ambitions, you're thinking about, like, connecting a wallet, connecting a system. I just think that's pretty kludgy and clunky. And so I believe there are going to be fintech companies for very vertically specific applications that are going to come in and think about, what is crypto? How does crypto power FX? How does crypto power treasuries? How does crypto power real world assets? So I think there will be some places where it's all in one place, but I do think it will be too monolithic. It's kind of the way in which you think about Craigslist. Craigslist was like the all-in-one place, but then it just broke apart over time because the experience is not good. So I think the bigger ambition, in my opinion, is how do you enable people to access things permissionless? Like, what does that hybridization look like? How do you move away from just being an exchange? How do you move away from just listing in custody? How do you think about moving towards creation and opening up that part of the financial markets? How do you think about composability of financial infrastructure, where anyone can build, trade, issue, settle, store, save, get yield? And then what are the experiences that you can build on top of that? And so, and I think what's really important is, how do you do it without needing approval from a central authority, like over a period of time? And it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that that's where the community can come together. I think that's where exchanges can come together. I think that's where companies can come together. And so, like, look, going back to what you had asked before, I think the financial system is quite fragmented. It's quite gated. I personally have felt this over a period of time. And ideally, the future should be much more unified, but completely open. And that's when we can just build much better products. And we should be able to compete, not because we're a closed system, but we're competing because we're building the best products, where we're offering liquidity, discovery, where trust is converged. And it's open because it's by design, but we're designing better products. And that's a lot of where, permissionless doesn't have to mean like it's lawlessness. It just means it's more equitable. It's accessible and it's programmable. And I don't like using the word equitable as in like that's where everyone has to start. It's just that you have the ability to be able to start if you want to. And it's like a fair way to do it. And that's part of Kraken's ethos, if you really think about it. If you look at any of our values in the way in which we built the ecosystem, is that we want crypto to be everywhere. We want to make sure as many people can access it as possible to billions and billions of people, not just a small subset, which is a lot of what you see today. And I think we're just seeing the beginnings of these use cases, which is great. You see stable coins and people talk about it a lot, but just think about all of the assets that we have or should have access to be able to use that as collateral for anything we want to do moving forward.
It's funny you bring up stable coins, and today I opened my email, and one of my TradFi newsletters, that's quite a popular newsletter, the title was "What the fuck are stable coins?" And I had to laugh to myself because I'm thinking, wow, here we are. Look at the impact of Circle's IPO. Instantly, you have Wall Street and so many people that were not paying attention and don't know what stable coins are, curious and here to learn about it. So it feels like we're at a really early point. When you talk about products, one product that you guys have recently done a partnership on and are working on is X Stocks, which is going to launch tokenized stocks. I personally am very excited about tokenized stocks because you talked about permissionless and equitable access. A lot of the world does not have access to invest in the NASDAQ or American stock exchanges because they're just in certain jurisdictions. Also, a lot of stock exchanges are not 24/7 trading, which crypto really embodies. So talk to us about X Stocks. What is X Stocks and the future of tokenized stocks that you see?
Look, I think this is more of a philosophical perspective. Look, everyone's excited about it, right? Because they hint at a world where you can trade any asset anytime from anywhere. But I'm not sure if like the real value is just faster access to equities. It's more like you get to collapse the friction, right, of custody, settlement, compliance, access. And that's more abstracted into code, right? For Kraken, I think it's more of a step forward for us, at least today, where we can have a unified market structure where traditional and crypto assets can coexist on, today, at least, one single platform. And for the world, especially for the billions locked out of the global markets, and I think this is a really important point, it's a shot at a financial inclusion and programmable ownership and 24/7 liquidity and borderless access. Now, those are like real fancy words. So again, what does that mean, right? Like, well, it's not just access, it's composability. For X Stocks, what's really important and exciting is that I get to plug into DeFi, I get to plug into lending, I get to plug into structured products, et cetera. There's a global liquidity pool, so it's not fragmented, regional silos and people in the middle trying to make money. Again, it's 24/7 market, so there's no market hours. There's not going to be arbitrage around each and every aspect of when the market closes and when it opens. Capital should and always be on. And I think what you're able to do then with that, again, is like you get smarter compliance. So KYC and AML can move on chain. So the rules are enforced ideally, programmably, not like brick and mortar World War II style where someone is imposing their will based on their interpretation. I think ideally it goes more and more on chain. And then look, next gen UX, right? Like you don't need bankers, you don't need brokers. There shouldn't be any delays. You just need an internet connection, which I think is it's awesome. That's why
an AI agent who understands financial context and can help you. And not everybody can afford a broker or can afford financial advice.
That's right.
Or a wealth advisor.
The concept of a broker might be one agent, a million agents, right? Like, and you're seeing a lot of great stuff that's happening every single day. Like just over the last week, I've been spending more time on the Gemini VO3, AI related videos we were watching with like the Star Wars troopers and Bigfoot. Like, look, that's those are toys and gimmicks that give us a lot of entertainment and joy in life. Imagine leveraging that same technology around how you want to think about your wallet, your access to capital, your investing strategy, whatever it might be. And so, look, we're crypto native, so we probably maybe think a little bit differently, which is like, tokenized stocks, in my opinion, are a Trojan horse. They're basically bringing in all traditional assets into programmable finance world. And once they're on chain, innovation really starts to fucking begin. And that's what I'm super pumped up about. And look, if it doesn't work the first time, we'll try the second, third, fourth, fifth. It's going to happen. So why not continue to try?
What do you think are when you think about the next 6 to 18 months, what are the big things that you think could happen here? Like, obviously tokenized stocks is coming. Do you think that picks up steam quickly, or do you think that's slow? Maybe you could talk about market structure bill in the US or thoughts around legislation. What are the major things that you're most excited about in the next year?
Look, what I'm most excited about right off the bat is like, look, we're going to see three major shifts, in my opinion. First, as you mentioned, is market structure reform, especially in the United States, where crypto legislation could finally define clear lanes for assets disclosures, oversight. Second, real world asset tokenization will go from, frankly, pilot to production. And our hope is that we're at the forefront of building that with institutions actively trading these tokenized treasuries, credit, and funds, and every other asset that we can think of, under the sun. And third, like, look, we're reshaping global capital flows. We don't really talk about it, but some of this has been driven by geopolitical instability, so it changes capital flows. You're seeing some aspects of de-dollarization and then re-dollarization coming through tokenized global capital flows, and then you have increased demand for neutral internet native assets like Bitcoin and stablecoins, right? So when you put all these things together, it's I don't know, it's some of the most exciting things that we're going to see over the next, as you mentioned, 6 to 18 months. So what does that mean in the U.S.? So what do we need? We need market structure. So we saw the Fit 21, didn't go past. We saw MiCA in EU, where we're more predominant there. And we have a lot of our market share, and that's at a baseline. You saw ETF approvals. So Clarity has unlocked more innovation. Builders are building more than ever before, and so they've always been waiting for a green light. So more of the market structure bill or stable, as we get closer to the market structure of the stablecoin bill, between now and hopefully August, I think you're going to see more people come off the sidelines and build more. Then what happens because of that is, as you saw with the announcements with DeFi and with the SEC Chair Paul Atkins, is like, look, now we're going to see what on-chain treasuries become much more predominant. We'll see credit, funds, DeFi, in TradFi. You're already seeing BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, JP Morgan scaling up. You're seeing programmable compliance and new financial products coming, right? So it's not just about tokenization as wrapping something, but they're now starting to think about not just wrapping, but rewiring the back end of global finance. I actually think a lot of people are scared about that. I saw a post from the the name of the company now, Airwallex CEO, and he just said like, hey, this doesn't really matter. I just think like anyone who's building or has spent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on back end traditional brick and mortar systems are really scared, right? Because this just rearranges when tokenization goes real. It's also just sort of rearrangement of geopolitics in some cases and even macro cases. So I won't go into the specifics there, but like, look, U.S. election is changing the way in which the central bank thinks and shifts. You have more emerging market instability, which is creating more demand for stablecoins and global liquidity rails, and more demand for Bitcoin. Bitcoin, we always talked about it as a natural reserve and inflation hedge, but it was following tech stocks because I think they were naturally following the same route as well. But this was the first time where you saw Bitcoin go in the other direction, where it kind of stayed stable and it continued to go up. And it's still the case now, right? As more and more instability comes, people are going to that first, and there's a huge amount of liquidity. So in a fragmented world, you're seeing a lot of realignment around that global liquidity. And so the financial layer and the connective tissue around how these companies are providing that, I think, become more important. And I think crypto, and if I'm maybe being too bold, is like the best position to serve that role as other people are trying to figure out what that will actually look like. And so, I think, again, Kraken's role in this is tailored for how an investor might want to think about this, how a policymaker is thinking about this, how builders are thinking about where they want to be in this, new global, realignment around what global liquidity looks like and the baseline looks like.
Yeah, I think one thing that stands out for me, what you just said, is that I think the trade war was one of the best things that could have happened for Bitcoin. I think it expedited into the mind of macro traders and gray hair investors. I've had more gray hair investors on my show in the past 6 months than I ever had before, where they're putting Bitcoin and gold in the same sentence. And that is absolutely massive. Okay, I want to touch on Kraken's IPO, and I want to talk about some fun stuff. And we got some questions in the comments. But before we get to that, we're just take a quick moment to hear from our sponsors who make the show possible. Selling your Bitcoin should be a last resort when you need cash. That's why there's Ledn, the trusted platform for Bitcoin-backed loans. You can unlock cash in as little as 18 hours with no monthly interest payments and no prepayment penalties. They've issued over $9 billion in loans and never lost a single Satoshi of client funds, even during the chaos of 2022. If you're a long-term hodler, this is the move. Get liquidity without selling at milkroad.com/Ledn, spelled Ledn. All right, we're back. Arjun, let's talk about Circle IPO'd recently. Give us your takes on that IPO, and then let's lead into Kraken's upcoming IPO and any other thoughts you have around IPOs in America, which seems to be a big narrative that's just gaining steam right now.
Look, I think most people look at the IPO as like an end state, like the journey is over. And I think like that's a very wrong way to take a look at it, because they start celebrating, hey, we're public and now we're done. And employees can think that way. And so the way I've thought about it is that, like, look, a company is built when you, like, the primordial ooze, and then you are at the early stages of building something, regardless of if you have raised capital or not. And you're in service to your customers or your clients or your ecosystem or your community. And I think that's a really important aspect, which is, along the way, in order to serve your customers, what do you need to do? And I think in some cases in the past, it's been really important for you to go raise money in the private markets from some brand name, because it gives you credibility to hire people or get some customers. Then the next stage of that is you go public, because then you get worldwide recognition that now that you have the ability to be able to disclose your financials and go at that level and get access to different levels of capital, then you should be able to serve more customers. I think if you look at least, to your question on Kraken's journey, everything that we've done is, we raised less than 25 million in our total lifespan as a company when we started in 2011. Jesse and Tan were the two co-founders. They came from the gaming space, and look, their mission and their vision, which I'm privileged to be a part of, and the culture that they created that I'm hoping to continue to augment, is that along the way, we're trying to be mission and culturally aligned around how to think about what crypto is today and what it will be moving forward. And again, how it's going to be compatible for everyone in the world, and how do we build along the way, is that we were always capital efficient along the way to make sure, okay, the money that we made from our professional traders, which is predominantly who our customers are worldwide, that we would continue to build products for them. And we would think about, what does hybridization mean? What does getting into DeFi mean as the community and the ecosystem evolve? Because when we started, there was no such thing, right? It was just Bitcoin, and then eventually Ethereum, and then the rest of the alternate chains. And so I've always said internally that, look, the only thing that matters for us is any decision that we make, external capital raise, going public or not, all has to be on the roadmap in making sure that we're serving our customers and clients. And so that's how I think about it. So we're always ready to be much more transparent, which is what we've done, right? So we did proof of reserves. We've been disclosing our financials every quarter. We started that practice earlier this year. Isn't meant to necessarily always gear up for something. It's really meant to say, like, here, we're serving our customers, we're being transparent. It's what the industry called for from the beginning, and we want to just do more and more of that. To your question around the Circle IPO and other companies in crypto that are going public, look, I think my personal perspective here, so I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the community or even necessarily Kraken, is that you have a certain amount of capital market cyclicality into ecosystems where you get the fear of missing out. Instead of thinking about tokenization and investing into what I'd say on-chain treasuries or credit and funds in DeFi and TradFi and that hybridization, people are thinking about, okay, well, how do I check the box and what's my exposure into crypto? It's very reminiscent of like the dot-com era, which is you took a company public because you had an idea and your stock just soared. I think Circle is a great company. I think a lot of what they do in helping to facilitate liquidity is really important. And we're glad to partner with them in multiple regions, as we are with many other stablecoin providers. But I do think there is euphoria when you just look at how the price is stocked versus how much revenue they make and what their margins look like. Because ultimately, that is what any company is going to be judged by in terms of what they offer their customers. And that's how we think about ourselves and how we judge ourselves by today, or what it will look like 10 years from now as we're building all these products for our customers in our community.
Yeah, euphoria is a good word to use for what I would feel about Circle's IPO as well. It feels like there is pent up demand from Wall Street and from institutions that aren't allocated to crypto because it's hard to do. Or
I do think it gives you a future state of what the world will be like. So if you go back in time when there was an injection of liquidity and obviously lower rates during the COVID timeframe, you saw Zoom pop, right? Which is like everyone had to move on to Zoom, and everyone's starting to think about, okay, the future of remote is already here. Well, that's true, but it's really only coming true over the course of 3, 5, and 10 years. So you have this huge injection of what usage would look like. And so I wouldn't say like, hey, that's their terminal value, what they would eventually be. But what it really showed was the accessibility and the ability for people to work in a specific way. And that's what the future was going to be. And so they were pricing in too much of the future right now. And that was the trade-off. I think you're seeing that in crypto right now as well, which is, look, the future is happening. It is compounding at a certain rate. Some areas are moving much faster than others. And obviously, these are companies that make money, they have margin, and they're growing at a a tremendous rate, and the whole ecosystem as well, including ourselves. But that doesn't mean that you should be valued on what your future could look like in 20 years, because 20 years is a really long time from now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. Any details you can give us around Kraken's IPO?
As I mentioned before, anything that we do is going to be into the service of clients, right? And so we always want to be making sure that we're transparent and we're ready to go public when we want to on behalf of our clients. And so timeline isn't something that we're thinking about.
Okay, great. I want to have a little bit of fun here at the end before we let you go, and then we might ask some questions as well. You've got 3 tokens listed in your bio on your X account: Dog, BTC, and Crack. I assume Crack is a homage to what the ticker will be for Kraken, is what I'm assuming why you have Crack there. Is that correct?
No, so we have a product coming out called Crack shortly, and so there's a wait list for it, and so I'm just excited about launching that product. And so whatever I might be paying attention to, it could be anything. It could be a video game. It could be the new runes protocol that people are talking about under BTC. I just get excited to spend time digging into it, even building around it just for fun, not necessarily a reflection of Kraken. But I do think whenever the community is engaged, it's kind of incumbent on us to do some investigation work to see what they're doing with it. And sometimes it could be a meme, sometimes it could be a form of expression, sometimes that toy, as Chris Dixon famously put, can become more of a utility, and then everyone can start using it. And I think it's the same way in which Doge became more predominant. I'm always looking for sort of interesting tidbits around what's going on. So I tend to just put that form of expression in my Twitter or LinkedIn profile while I might be playing video games at the same time. So it's just a reaction to how I'm feeling at that moment, not necessarily a reaction to what I'm executing on.
Right. I appreciate your willingness to share and to be so present on X. It's awesome to see. We need more founders and more leaders who are doing that. What's Dog?
So it's I don't know if you've been following it.
I'm not following Dog. No, give me the TLDR.
It is a community that's focused on getting the meme coin style form of expression on the Bitcoin network, right? And so there's a group of folks. I think today they're calling Rune June.
Okay.
And Dog is one of the meme coins that they're thinking about continuing to build against. And ideally, they're looking to go get listed. But I've just been engaging with the community, learning a little bit more about what they're building. It's not just Dog, but a bunch of different things. So again, like I said, I'm just excited to dig in and wondering why they're there in the first place building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The best way to learn is to experiment and get involved. You also have Bitcoin on there. This might be a fairly obvious question. I'm not going to ask you why you have Bitcoin on there. We talk about Bitcoin all the time. What's one thing that you think everyone is missing about Bitcoin, or one thing you think you wish everybody knew or was paying more attention to?
Look, I think there's always a early adopter crowd that looks into crypto. I mean, we're a part of that, and so are my teammates, and we're trying to figure out a way in which we can redefine new rails and old rails. And I think, like, Bitcoin has become, at least today, a form of digital gold, right? And that's how people are thinking about it, right? Because it's a natural reserve, inflation hedge, and that's why Bitcoin becomes strengthened. But what I'm most excited about is what else it enables, right? Like Bitcoin and Ethereum, pairs just on the exchanges are extremely liquid, and we have one of the most liquid marketplaces. I watch this all the time, and so what I think becomes much more important is, like, as the market bifurcates between these chains and what interoperability will look like. I'm just really excited around what the new order is going to look like for DeFi and TradFi, and what that convergence is going to look like. I go back to, we already have financial products that we've been building, but it's been building off of the old ecosystem. What does it look like when you can start building this on a new ecosystem that's got global distribution? It's exciting. Like, if I was to continue to talk about it, I would just have tears in my eyes because it's just so cool.
It's awesome to see you be so mission driven and so focused on not just the future of crypto, but a bigger mission around the future of finance and the future of really everybody's access to these financial products.
Well,
Arjun.
I think what's more important is that, like, look, it's crypto is just enabling these rails to be able to think at a global macro level, but at the same time, we can build much more micro products. And so I'm looking forward to a world where not just us, right? Like, this is kind of like what Kraken's perspective is, and I mentioned, like, we want to be like an AWS for the ecosystem rather than one platform to rule them all. Is imagine all of the things that you can start building for not just a million people, but actually just for one person. Like, building a product for one person is just as important for building it for a million people.
And is that enabled because of AI? Because obviously, like, usually building a product for one person isn't profitable.
Well, look, you you always were thinking much more global distribution with one product that is meant for everybody, because that's the way in which the infrastructure was built. Like, you can think of any company, right? Which is like, everyone should just eat the same cereal. Okay, great, I get it. And then you started thinking about supply chain and logistics and like local, so like local coverage of food is becomes different, right? And now you start thinking about, okay, well, what do I get in San Francisco? What do I get in LA? And what do I get in New York? And then how do I produce supply chain for those specific locations? And that's also continually involved. When you think about software, we've already been starting to do that. In software, you're starting to think about, okay, great, discovery, workflow, conversions of, what does it mean for an accountant? What does it mean for compliance? What does it mean for legal? What does it mean for marketing? What does it mean for a designer? What does it mean for a product manager? The definition of product manager for Microsoft, they used to do all of these things. Now the product managers are very attuned to a very specific use case. And so as a designer, now you're thinking about back-end programmers is not just full stack and then front end, but then on front end, you've got front end design programmers. So you're starting to become more and more specific. The reason why you can do that is because you're able to build more software to be honed into what I'd call one customer profile. There's no reason why I don't think like consumer products are going to do the same thing, which is great. Now I can build a set of products for millions of people, but within those millions of people, I can build a set of feature sets that are very specifically attuned for, let's just say, you, right, or me. And so you're already starting to see that, right, where like the Facebook feed is attuned to you, the Twitter feed is attuned to someone else, but that's related around content. But imagine when your experience charts starts changing, because and again, I always go back to the world becomes more permissionless, becomes more decentralized. There's a lot more discovery, and then the convergence of like what design will look like for each individual will make it much more profitable because you're not relying on traditional infrastructure. And so maybe that's in, I don't know, 50 years. But I just feel like every week we're compounding with more and more innovation to be able to build around that. And by the way, I can build for myself. And this is the whole point, right? Like, maybe I don't need the company to build for me. I just need the company to help enable it for me. And this is why I always go back to the AWS construct, which is, look, I've got teammates here that are also from all over the world. In fact, I have a teammate here, and his his whole sole goal is like, look, I live in Australia where it's a little bit more overburdensome in terms of what my capital is, where it's stored, and what do I do with it. So I just want to build a product for myself. And he's just doing it by himself. He doesn't need an army of 15 people. Imagine doing that 2 years ago, or doing that even 10 years ago. It would have been virtually impossible.
It's an exciting time for sure. Arjun, really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for your time.
Jay, thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody for listening in. I've got to remind you all before I let you go that none of today's episode is financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. Arjun is not your financial advisor. You should always take time to think and do your own research before you make any investments. If you need help with any of your research, you should subscribe to the Milk Road Show, because we're here every day, 5 days a week, helping you guys with your crypto investments. Appreciate you. Thanks for your time today, all. Have a wicked awesome day. We'll see you back again tomorrow. If y'all are making swaps or trades right now, highly recommend you check out Milk Road Swap. This is a DEX that we built in partnership with Cow Protocol. Why did we build it? Not to make money, just honestly so we could have a place to do our swaps for the lowest fees that we could find. This is the fees on Ethereum, Arbitrum, and Base are only 0.15% fees. This is a huge difference from other centralized exchanges that charge 0.5% or even up to 1.2% fees on their swaps. Also, you can swap on Solana, all at swap.milkroad.com. Check it out today. You won't be upset. And you can join me in my favorite place to make swaps on chain. As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your #1 resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.